Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payments. Go to trustedamerican.com and see how much they can save you today.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. What's up, guys? Hey, Happy New Year. Not quite there yet. We're in that no man's land between Christmas and New Year's. That week of idle time where you don't know what to do with yourself. You feel like crap because you ate too much, right? You drank too much. You're not sleeping great. You're eating a lot of sugar, a lot of cookies, right? You need a lot of coffee. I do. You do. We're all here together. Welcome to Guerilla Sports Daily. I'm Nate Jackson, Guerilla Sports. We got a lot of football to cover today, okay? The Avs and the Nuggets, well, the Nuggets were a little bit active. The Avs played on Friday, but really it's football time. It's the end of the year, and if you're any good at football, these games matter. And the Broncos can be counted on that list as being good at football again. Hooray for that right off the bat, okay? Let's pause and reflect on the doldrums that the Broncos have lived in for almost a decade, guys. Ever since they won the Super Bowl in 2015. The Broncos have been, let's face it, bad. They've gone through a bunch of coaches. They've gone through a bunch of quarterbacks. They've gone through different defensive coordinators. And yes, they have a new owner. And now, finally, it seems as if the ship is on the right track, okay? But we know that now. And now we have new expectations for the Denver Broncos. And going into this weekend's game on Saturday against the Cincinnati Bengals, there was a whole lot on the line. That's right. The Denver Broncos went to Cincinnati with playoff aspirations on their mind. All they had to do was beat the Cincinnati Bengals and get to 10 wins, and the Broncos are in the playoffs. Spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the game or don't know what happened yet, the Broncos lost. The Broncos lost 34-27 in overtime against the Cincinnati Bengals, and this guy, Joe Burrow, wow. Beautiful hair, right? Drives a Batmobile. Okay, that's a true story. He has a Batmobile. He goes to fashion shows and he dresses like a fashion icon. But what is most impressive, in my opinion, about Joe Burrow is his ability to throw the rock on time, accurately, with precision to his wide receivers who are on the same page as Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, who started off this season really bad. Offensively, they were really good. They just couldn't close out games. We're 4-8, and now they're 8-8 after beating the Broncos at home on Saturday in a thrilling game that went into overtime. Now, the Broncos had a difficult task ahead of them going into this game at all because of the prowess of that guy right there, because of his receivers who are playing at a high level, because of what's at stake, because you're going on the road. This is probably Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, the most potent NFL offense going right now. I mean, Joe Burrow is leading the league in passing. He is probably playing at an MVP level. Not probably, he is. He's 400 yards ahead of everybody else. He's got 4,641 yards passing. With a big game this coming up week, he could get to 5,000 yards, almost 70% completion, 42 touchdowns, and only 8 interceptions. 42 touchdowns and only 8 interceptions, okay? So that's what you knew as the Denver Broncos team you were going into play against, a team that was clicking on all cylinders offensively, okay? Chase Brown, a good running back as well, having a good season. So it wasn't just about Joe Burrow through the air. Jamar Chase leading the league in receiving. So you got the best quarterback in the league. You also got the best receiver, at least statistically. He's got 117 catches, 1,612 yards, and 16 touchdowns himself. So that's what you're going into. And it's not just Jamar. It's T. Higgins. And what we found also, Mike Gesicki, the tight end, who, likes to do the gritty. Got traded over from the Miami Dolphins, but had a good game. So the Broncos defense had to be ready for this fight, right? The Broncos defense had to be ready for this fight. And Shawn Peyton, head coach of the Denver Broncos, had to come up with a game plan, not just defensively, offensively. You got to think that a guy like Shawn Peyton, who oversees the whole operation, is involved in the defensive strategy at least a little bit. Pops his head in the meeting at least and says, hey, what are you guys working on? What do you got? What are you doing? Here's what we're thinking. We're trying to get some patico here and create a game plan that favors the entire team, okay? A philosophy, how we're going to go win this game. And so I would have liked to be a fly on the wall in those meetings. Look, the Denver Broncos running game hasn't been good, okay, all season long. Now, you look at the Washington Commanders and what they're doing with Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is a rookie quarterback, and he's playing almost as an MVP level. And how is he doing it? Because there's a really strong running game philosophy attached to the Commanders and what they do. This is not the case here in Denver. Shawn Peyton likes to win through the air, okay? Even when the running game is working, he has a hard time sticking to it. He has to write run it on his play sheet so he does not forget to call run plays. Now, Cliff Kingsbury of the Commanders doesn't have to write run it on his play sheet, okay? The dude Johnson in Detroit with the Lions doesn't have to write run it on his play sheet. That's part of the ethos of their team. The Baltimore Ravens, they don't have to write run it on their play sheet. The Steelers don't have to write run it on their play sheet. That's part of their philosophy. That's part of their ethos, who they are. Not Shawn Peyton. Okay, he didn't become Shawn Peyton relative to his success and the skins on the wall by running the football. He became a legend by throwing the football. Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, who owns, his former receiver owns the NFL record for most catches in a season, 149. That's under this guy, okay? There is no running back who broke a record for carries in a season with this guy as his coach, okay? You want to throw the ball, you play for this guy. You want to catch the ball, ideally, you play for this guy. And that's what he's trying to develop here. But it puts a lot of pressure on Bo Nix. Bo Nix, that fella right there. I think he's doing a fantastic job shouldering the burden of everything that's going on right now. You got to remember, this guy's in college for 5 years, and all of a sudden he's thrust in the spotlight on an NFL team on a playoff run late in the season, okay, with not a lot of experience in this league. I think Bo Nix is doing an admirable job. And if you look at the way the game shook out against the Bengals, was it a perfect game by Bo Nix? It was not, but it was pretty darn good. He threw for 219 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. It was a bad pick, but he went 24-31. That's pretty darn efficient. A lot of it is just kind of quick passing game, but he had that long strike to Marvin Mims. Yeah, throw Marvin up there, man. Marvin Mims. Got to give some props to Marvin Mims. 8 catches, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns. We know Marvin Mims is a deep threat. We know he's faster than everyone out there. You saw him get behind the 2 safety look for that deep touchdown throw by Bo Nix, which, by the way, went almost 70 yards in the air, guys. 70 yards in the air. For all those critics who said Bo Nix's arm isn't strong enough to throw the deep ball or whatever, okay, there goes your theory. Bo Nix's arm is plenty strong. His deep balls are plenty strong. And in fact, he keeps overthrowing Troy Franklin, his buddy from Oregon, which is so confusing, right? The one guy he actually has a connection with, Troy Franklin, he can't seem to hit him on those deep balls. When that starts falling, the Broncos are going to be in a lot better shape because, but I'm going to talk about that in a second. I want to talk about Marvin because Marvin is a smaller receiver. He's fast. He has great ball skills, great vision. We've seen what he can do on punt return. Now the Broncos are putting Marvin Mims in the backfield, not the Broncos, Shawn Peyton, and allowing him to do kind of the joker position. A lot of different positions. Now, the better an offense becomes, the more each guy could do each position. It's like positionless football. When the 49ers were really clicking with Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Brandon Ayuk, they played a form of positionless football where George Kittle can line up wide. He can line up as a tight end. He can line up in the backfield. He can go in motion. But Christian McCaffrey can also line up in the backfield, go in motion, line up out wide. They can all do. Debo could do that. They can all do the same thing. Broncos aren't there yet, but what they are reaching for and like moving towards with that guy right there, Marvin Mims, is at least one player who has the ability to line up anywhere on the field. That presents a lot of options for a play caller. It confuses defenses. It sets up a lot of double moves and play action passes and misdirection things that open up the field and open up the holes for you to take advantage of. Marvin Mims is an asset, and the Broncos and Shawn Peyton are finally figuring out how to use him. But aside from his speed, right, and his obvious vision with the ball in his hand, that last play, almost one of the last plays in regulation, when he went up and caught that ball over two guys, showed a level of ball skills that you don't really see from a smaller player like Marvin Mims to go up and moss that thing. He mossed it. He squeezed it. He brought it in. And I was worried when they went to review that play that they were going to say it was incomplete because it was a little bit jostling on the way down. Thankfully, the call was upheld. Touchdown. In a very unlikely last drive, during which I was pulling my hair out because there was a little bit of clock mismanagement. The clock was ticking, particularly that little 3-yard catch to Lucas Kroll. The Broncos only had one timeout left. He didn't get out of bounds. They lost like 30 seconds. When you're in a 2-minute drill, and they actually even had less than 2 minutes, what you don't want to do, especially when you don't have a lot of timeouts, you don't want to use the timeout. What you don't want to do is catch a 3-yard pass near the sideline and not get out of bounds. It doesn't help you at all. The Broncos needed a touchdown, okay? They're not trying to get in field goal range. What does 3 yards get you? 3 yards is not worth the 30 seconds that it cost you there. So I thought all was lost at that point. I was concerned, like many of you were, that the Broncos were not going to be able to get that done. And then on that touchdown in question, the one they threw to Marvin Mims, the one he went up over two guys and mossed, Bo Nix got flushed from the pocket. Excuse me, my cortado's coming out. He gets flushed from the pocket, right? So when we're watching this play and we see how much pressure he got and he had to run out, did anyone think when he was running, he threw it up, that was going to be a touchdown? I sure didn't. And then Marvin comes out of nowhere, Superman, and scores a touchdown. Okay, now the Broncos are down 1. What would you have done? Would you have gone for 2 there? Or would you have kicked that extra point and played for overtime? Now, another game, another loss, another onslaught of questions about did Shawn Peyton handle it correctly. There's a lot of folks out there saying that Shawn Peyton should be fired. Fired! Fire Shawn Peyton is a hashtag that trends after a game like that. Guys, fire Shawn Peyton, then hire who? Who do you want? This Broncos team is moving in the right direction. It is not perfect. Shawn Peyton is not a football god. Okay? He's a very intelligent football man, but even the most intelligent football men in the world cannot script the game and control every aspect of it. You are in the moment. You make the decisions you think are right for your team, and then your team has to go out and execute it, okay? The Broncos did not play a perfect game. Absolutely got pushed around by the Bengals. I mean, if you want to take a look at these team stats, I know it went to overtime, but the Bengals had 34 first downs. The Broncos had 19. The Bengals had 23 first downs through the air. The Broncos had 10. The Bengals had 499 total yards. Broncos had 329. The Bengals had 84 offensive plays. 84. Okay? The Broncos had 60. The Bengals, Joe Burrow threw for over 400 yards. The Bengals dominated this game and dominated time and possession by over 15 minutes, okay? The Cincinnati Bengals should have run away with this thing early. They turned the ball over on downs twice to start the game after very long drives during which they just possessed the ball, and you wonder why the Broncos defense looks so freaking tired at the end of the game, okay? It's a twofold issue here. Yes, the Bengals offense is very good, methodical, moving the ball down the field. Their quick passing game is very difficult to stop, guys. when you are that precise, as Joe Burrow is, have that much velocity on that precision, and the timing is so good between you and the receivers, it's very hard to stop that. You got to play tight coverage. If you got soft zone, they're going to pick you apart. And the Broncos did have a soft zone out there. Weren't able to play these guys tight enough to prevent these balls from being caught. Yeah, they tackled them. There wasn't a lot of short balls that got taken the distance, but what it allowed is just them to chew up the clock. On top of that, the Broncos had no running game. Jaleel McLaughlin was good, but they don't commit to it. They never commit to the run. And the Broncos had a series of 3-and-outs or short drives that when you're a defensive player, okay, you're a defensive player. We just got off the field after an 11-play drive, 14-play drive. We are gassed, okay? We get to the side, we sit down, we drink a little water, a little Gatorade, yellow, red, orange, whatever you want, okay? Hoping to be able to take a break here. But then there's a 3-and-out, we're right back on the field. And we're right back to chasing these dudes around. And so what do you think's going to happen when overtime comes around? So I go back to this question. Would you go for 2 or would you go for 1? I think in hindsight, he might go for 2. But in the moment, Coach Peyton wanted to play for overtime. Because, why? Because the Broncos' playoff implications are such that a tie would send them to the playoffs. So Mr. Killer Instinct there was playing for the tie. It's tough. It's tough because as an offense, you want to go for 2 there. And Bo Nix was doing that. He said, let's go for 2. And the coach said, nope, we're going to kick it. We're going to go to overtime. And go to overtime, they did. And the Broncos defense did force a punt. But the Broncos offense couldn't hold up their end of the bargain. They had 2 3-and-outs. That was all she wrote. The Bengals were able to push it down there and end with T. Higgins on a deep ball and then T. Higgins on a short little touchdown. The Broncos defense was gassed. The Broncos defense was done. And Riley Moss is taking the brunt of it. Riley Moss is getting blamed for it, which I don't like at all. Riley Moss just is coming back off a knee injury, guys. He tore or strained his MCL, and he tore it in some way. Okay, I've torn my MCL. I didn't need surgery. It didn't tear all the way, like pop, like that. What it did was go pop, splay. Some fibers here. That fibers just kind of work their way back with their healing process. But guess what? Just after 4 weeks, they're not strong enough to handle that smoke out there. He didn't get hurt. That was great. But this guy comes back off an injury, probably gets rushed back, because that's how it goes when you're hurt in the NFL. You get rushed back. Why do you get rushed back? Because the pressure is behind you to get on the field, man. We need you out there. Look we're getting gashed out there. Levi Wallace got cut. The cornerback who replaced Riley Moss got cut because he played so bad. How do you think that resonates with Riley? What do you think the coaches are saying to Riley when he's in the training room rehabbing his knee? They're walking in, hey, bud, how you feeling, man? You almost ready? We need you out there, man. All right, hey, hurry back. They're not going to say hurry back, but we need you, man. And he knows they need him. And he also knows his window as an NFL player is pretty small. You can get Wally pipped, as they say. You know, if you get hurt and a guy steps in for you and he plays better than you, he'll never step on the field again. That's how it goes, okay? He knows that. He also knows the Broncos need him. So he rushed himself back out there, and he got exploited. You don't think that Joe Burrow knew exactly where to go with that football? The guy who just coming off a knee injury? Let's test that knee. Let's test that knee. Riley Moss led the team in tackles, okay? That's not a good sign. 100. I'm not 100. He had 14 tackles. He had 114 tackles, okay? Most tackles ever in a game by Riley Moss. No, Riley had 14 tackles. You don't want your corner having 14 tackles. What that means is that they're throwing the guy the ball who he's covering, and he has to make the tackle. That happened over and over and over again. And it's not just Riley. In this game, guys, Riley was the leading tackler. He's a defensive back with 14 tackles. Brandon Jones was second with 13 tackles. He's also a defensive back. PJ Locke, third in tackles with 9. He's also a defensive back. Jaquan McMillian, 4th in tackles with 7. He's also a defensive back. The 4 leading tacklers on the Broncos against the Bengals were defensive backs. Okay? What does that mean? It means there's a lot of completed passes in the secondary. How many? Well, 39 of them. 39 receptions made by Bengals receivers. 11 by T. Higgins. 9 by Jamar Chase. 10 by Mike Gesicki. Right there with 3 guys, that's 30 catches. Chase Brown had another 4. And then a couple others sprinkled in there. So with that many catches, it begs the question, why are we not getting to Joe Burrow? Why are we not putting more pressure on Joe Burrow? Why are we letting him sit back there and pick guys apart? Well, guess what? The Broncos had 7 sacks. 7 sacks of the Bengals. 7. Zack Allen alone had 3.5 sacks. In what would have been a signature game for Zack Allen, in an already stellar year, the Broncos are leading the league in sacks. And they got another 7, 3.5 for that guy. Zack Allen is playing at an all-pro level and finally starting to get the respect that he deserves in this league. But after a loss, when a game like that from him results in a loss, nobody even remembers it. I mean, obviously, they'll give him a pat on the back at the facility when they watch the film, and they'll all see what he did. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day if you lose. If you can't find a way to pull it out, nobody remembers your good games. But Zack Allen had a really good game. 2 tackles for losses, 3.5 sacks, 5 or 6 quarterback hits. I mean, really impressive stuff. Jonathan Cooper had a sack and a half. DJ Jones had a half a sack. Jonathan Franklin Myers had a half a sack. And DeAndre Tillman had a sack. But Joe Burrow was just back there picking them apart. So it just shows you how much action there was on the Bengals offense compared to the Broncos offense. The Broncos offense just wasn't on the field enough. You know, Jaleel McLaughlin was averaging 6.9 yards per carry, but he only had 10 carries, guys. He only had 10 carries. Audric Estime had 9 carries. Marvin Mims had 1. So that's 20 carries to ball carriers. And it's hard to get a rhythm, though. You know, it's hard to get a rhythm when you're not picking up first downs. And, Broncos were 4-12 on 3rd down. Not horrible, but not good. Not good enough. And ultimately, the Denver Broncos just couldn't find a way to beat this high-powered offense on the road. And now we have to accept that the Broncos lost their 2nd consecutive game when they could have locked up the playoffs, and they're coming home to play the big bad Kansas City Chiefs. That's right. Look at those guys, the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs, who are right now the number 1 seed in the NFL and have locked it up. They're 15-1. 15-1. The word on the street is that they're going to rest their starters, okay? How many of their starters will be rested? Will Patrick Mahomes be in street clothes? Here. Hey, guys. Good luck today. Go get him. You guys are looking good, man. Will Taylor Swift be in Power Field in the suite, just looking down on her man? Probably not, because her man will be also in street clothes. Andy Reid has a history, okay, of resting his starters in the last game of the season, even when they have a bye, locked up. It's happened 4 times. He's rested the starter all 4 times. Does that mean he'll do it again? Because it is going to be 3 weeks till they play again, okay? So just because you've done it before doesn't mean you'll do it again. But there's also the playoff implications and what's on the line that need to be considered. Will Andy Reid play a form of chess where he'd actually like to allow the Broncos to make it into the playoffs because he sees them as a weaker opponent, instead of beating the Broncos and potentially sending in the Bengals, who he might be more afraid of? Hard to tell. Hard to tell if the Walrus plays that kind of game, or if he's more of a we'll fight whoever wants to fight us. We'll take on anyone, anywhere. We believe we can win. I think it's more of that. I don't think he's playing chess as far as who he wants to play in the playoffs, because then you can get all twisted up and things can go awry. I think he wants to prepare his team to be their best in the playoffs. Does that mean sitting the starters, or does that mean resting the starters? Does that mean playing them for a quarter? Does that mean not playing them at all? Does that mean playing them the whole game? Either way, the Denver Broncos have to look at this game like they are playing the starters. Prepare to play Patrick Mahomes. Prepare to play Travis Kelce and everybody else, okay? Because even if you don't end up playing those guys, the guys you play are good. They're very good. They're professional football players. And guess what? They're all on the same team. They all play in one way or the other. They all know what the standard is. They all know how to win. And this Broncos team has to find a way to pull a win away from the team that always finds a way to win. I think the Chiefs would love to send the Broncos home on a 3-game losing streak. Who cares who gets in instead of them? This is a division rival in our backyard. And by the way, you don't think they heard the chatter about how the Broncos have their number and they had them on the ropes and they should have won the game in Arrowhead and the Chiefs got lucky? You don't think Andy Reid has a little bit of an ego when it comes to that stuff? You don't think he wants to come here and hear all the cries and the sniffles and the sobs as Bronco fans go home to another playoff-less New Year? The Broncos have to get ready to play their best game of the year this Sunday, January 5th, against the Chiefs at home. So if you're out there and you plan on going to this game, bring that type of energy, guys, because we're going to need it. We're going to need it. Even though the Broncos are favored right now by 9.5 points, who cares about that? We're going to need it. We're going to need every one of you to get this Broncos victory. Because the Colts lost, they're out of it. Okay, so now it's only the Bengals and the Dolphins who are still in this playoff picture. Throw that playoff picture up there, would you, Mark? Yeah, look at that. Is that where we're at right now? Yeah. Yeah, this is where we're at. Minnesota Vikings. Wow. Quite an exciting team, Minnesota Vikings. Right now, they are the number 1 seed. And if the Super Bowl playoffs were to start today, the Lions would play the Buccaneers in the first round. The Commanders, who had an incredible win last night, also in overtime. Also, their opponent decided not to go for 2, the Falcons, when they pulled one out of the hat right at the end there and went for the tie and then lost in overtime. Maybe some coaches will look at that, what's happened this last week, and decide to alter their sort of vision if that were to happen again. But then you got the Packers and the Eagles in the first round. And then over there in the AFC, if they were to start today, the Broncos would be in and they play the Buffalo Bills in the opening round in Buffalo. That's going to be a challenge regardless. The Chargers would go on the road and play the Baltimore Ravens, and Pittsburgh would have to go on the road and play the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans, probably the weakest of the divisional winners in the AFC. I think all the wild card teams would love to go play the Texans over the Ravens or the Bills. And so if it were to start today, the Pittsburgh Steelers would have the most favorable matchup there, and the Broncos would have the least favorable matchup. The Buffalo Bills, the Chiefs might be getting the first round bye, but the Buffalo Bills might be the favorite right now because of how they're playing. But none of that's going to matter if the Broncos can't take care of business on Sunday. None of it is going to matter. I got to remind people of this. I was on a team in 2008. We were 8-5. All we had to do was win 1 game of the last 3. And we knew that. And that was the poison in the mind. The knowledge that all we had to do was win 1. It didn't matter which. Not this one. I mean, if we don't win this one, it's cool because we got the next one. Well, guess what happened? We lost the first one. But then it was like, well, all we got to do is win 1 of these last 2. That's all we got to do. So if we don't win this one, we got the last one, right? And then we lost the second one. So we had 1 more shot. And all we had to do was win it. And we went on the road and we got our asses handed to us by the San Diego Chargers. And guess what happened after that? Yeah. Everybody got fired. Right. The back-to-back Super Bowl winning coach who had been here for 14 years and had established one of the most firm, respected cultures in the NFL was fired. And his whole staff was let go too. And a lot of players, including yours truly. Bitter? No, not at all. Look, The Denver Broncos have lost 2 of those 3 games, one of which they had to win. And now they're staring at this last game. And we're going to see what these Broncos are made of. It's a young team. Okay, nobody's going to get fired after this. I'm not suggesting that, because this is a new regime, and the signs are pointed in the right direction. Things are looking up, guys. 9 wins on the doorstep of 10 wins. That's a real big improvement, especially considered how young this team is with Bo Nix at the helm. So nobody's going to get fired, okay? But the goodwill, the good taste in your mouth all season from defying expectations will be soured by a 3-game losing streak and missing out on the playoffs. Don't let that happen. Prepare to meet the best Chiefs team that they can assemble and prepare to dismantle them in front of your home crowd, and everything will be all right. Before we get out of here, I want to touch on the CU Buffs guys who got their buffs handed to them in the Alamo Bowl. 36-14, lost to BYU. Shedeur Sanders, 16 of 23, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Very non-Shedeur of him. Travis Hunter had 4 catches, 106 yards, and a touchdown. But the team as a whole played like doggy doo-doo, okay? 2 rushing yards in the whole game, and only 9 first downs. The game didn't matter. But if it didn't matter, then why were these guys playing in it? Why were Shedeur and Travis playing in it? Because it did matter. Because it did matter. Coach Prime wanted to go out on top, and he wasn't able to. This team wasn't able to perform its best. And BYU, a very good football team, clearly felt disrespected all week by not even being mentioned. Nobody even knew who CU was playing. And you wonder if they took their opponent seriously or if they took the game seriously. They clearly didn't play their best football. And so the idea that we were going to go out with bang with Shedeur and Travis, it just didn't come to fruition. That said, we still need to take a step back and respect the incredible 2 seasons that these 2 individuals and Coach Prime have given us here in Colorado. Shedeur and Travis moving on to the NFL, but the CU Buffs program will continue, presumably under Coach Prime, and 2025 season starts now for Coach Prime and the CU Buffs. Well, I'm hoping you guys feel better now. Maybe you can take a sip of coffee with me before we get out of here. This is a Cortado, okay? I'm going to put my pinky up for the Cortado. Tasty, tasty. All right, guys, hey, I'm Nate Jackson. This has been Guerilla Sports Daily. Happy New Year. Enjoy these last couple of days of 2024. Make yourself a resolution that you're not going to break. This has been Guerilla Sports Daily. I'm Nate Jackson. See you next time. Beep, beep, beep.